Hi, I'm Joe with Gramophone, and today we're here with Robert Bruce from Pro-Ject. Robert, how you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
Good. Great to see you again, as always. And today we want to talk just a little bit about phono preamps because it does sometimes confuse folks about why they even need a phono preamp, what a better one does. But first, maybe we can just talk a little bit about the fact that vinyl, obviously the dominant medium back in 1980 or so, by the late 80s was declining in sales pretty fast, and around 2004, vinyl sales and turntable sales started picking up and have picked up for 2 decades every year in a row. So why vinyl? Why do people still love to interact with this once forgotten medium?
I think it's the interaction with the music. It's a more personal experience, and it's also an ownership issue. Having a record and playing it is a whole different experience than streaming or plugging in a CD and not being able to read the liner notes. Some nostalgia, but sonically, because of the advances in record playback equipment, sounds better than ever. So that's my primary source of listening at home.
And I think you really hit on why it's, for so many of our customers, really become a primary source again, is because records, when played through high quality gear, a good turntable, and you guys make so many different good turntable models at various price points, but when you're playing vinyl through a good playback medium, it just can sound fantastic. And to my ears, it always sounds like the balance of bass versus high end is a little different than I experience it with digital, where with digital streaming, obviously the high quality streaming services or a CD, sometimes it sounds like there's just a little bit more upper end maybe than there really should be relative to the bass. Is that, are there some
It
things
can
you
be, for sure.
experience?
It can be. Digital can be on the brighter or edgier side. Good digital, not as much.
Right.
But again, there's still a involvement factor that I think is higher with a good turntable.
Absolutely. So now let's dive a little bit into preamps, and the next question we want to talk about is, why do you need a phono preamp? So many of our manufacturers, of course, now in their electronics are not including a phono preamp at all, in which case you have to get this, but even sometimes when they include a phono preamp, an external one is really a way to go.
It is. The output of a phono cartridge is so small, and it needs special amplification and equalization. Even when a manufacturer incorporates a phono circuit built into their preamp or integrated amp or receiver, it's often just a convenience, not a high performance device. So having a better phono preamp can really provide the level of performance that a better turntable is capable of providing.
With a dedicated circuit like this, you're getting a whole nother power supply to be able to supply the current so everything can be what you want it to be. And there's just a whole engineering idea around making this the best it can be, where a lot of times for a receiver or integrated amp manufacturer, they know that some people might not even have a turntable, and they may just be putting in a very, very basic phono preamp, right? So it'll do the job, but it won't equal something like this.
Right. It's typically going to be an integrated circuit and an inexpensive one. There are a number of suppliers that make very inexpensive phono preamp integrated circuits, and any manufacturer can implement that. You're right. This has a dedicated power supply, much higher quality amplification and equalization circuitry, and so it will provide higher performance. A lot of times people say, I've got it built in, why would I need an external one? Until they listen to the difference, the same turntable plugged into the built-in versus a good quality external phono preamp, and then they understand the difference and what it provides.
Absolutely. So another question would be, and this is somewhat simple but can confuse folks, there are moving magnet and moving coil phono cartridges. And even though they're both doing the same thing in a sense, they're both getting the information off the record, they're really different animals.
They are. The moving coil cartridge has much lower output. The basic design principle is the same, but as the name suggests, a moving magnet phono cartridge, the cantilever, which is a typically an aluminum arm that holds the diamond. The diamond's in the record groove. The movement causes a magnet to move, which generates an electrical pulse.
We can say too that the moving magnet phono cartridges, there's nothing wrong with them at all. In fact, most of the more entry level to a pretty good grade, most of those phono cartridges are moving magnet. So now let's start talking about something that Pro-Ject is doing that I'm not really aware of anybody else who's doing it, but it's long been known that in the professional audio world, when you go to see a concert or whatever, the cabling is always all balanced cabling. Right. Versus in the consumer audio world, where most products really give you RCA connections, not a three-prong balance connection. So that's kind of the standard in consumer. Maybe you can just talk about the differences between the two and why you guys have moved strongly in the direction of providing balanced solutions.
Right. Well, this signal I mentioned is so small in a phono cartridge, it's much like a microphone. When you try to pass that low-level signal a long distance in a microphone, the only way to do that is with a balanced cable. Much better rejection of electromagnetic and radio frequency interference. The same is true here. The phono cartridge, especially a moving coil, is so small and is so vulnerable to interference that it just doesn't make sense that for years the standard method has been to take the phono cartridge signal, and a moving coil is a balanced transducer. It creates a balanced signal. It's almost always converted to single-ended via RCA cables. At the very high end, there are plenty of turntables that have balanced connection, and super high-end phono preamps often have balanced. Pro-Ject has brought out balanced phono preamps starting at $500, going up to a couple $1,000s, but offering a balanced input with a turntable that has a moving coil or a Picket Pro B balanced moving magnet cartridge, connected balanced to a balanced phono preamp, is a significant improvement in noise floor, about 10 dB lower noise, and allows that signal to get into the phono preamp in a much higher quality connection.
And you can actually measure, of course. You mentioned 10 dB lower noise floor with balanced. That's measurable. And last night it was interesting. We did a seminar for a lot of our customers at the Columbia store. And you played several times back to back various records where we heard the difference between a standard and very good quality, because you were using obviously Pro-Ject phono preamps, standard, very good quality, unbalanced or RCA style, and then you played it balanced, the same cut. And I was really surprised at some of the things I heard back to back. The sound stage just really opened up, and there is a difference in the dynamic range that, for example, when you've got a heavy steady drum track, which is one of the things you were playing last night, you can really hear how that drum sounds more like a live drum and less like a compressed recording of a drum, right?
Right. The other thing that is a common reaction to the balance connection, oftentimes people say the reason I don't think a turntable sounds as good is the residual noise. Like they can hear it and say, oh, it's the dynamic range isn't high enough. And lowering the noise floor really makes things explode and, like you said, improve the dynamics and the openness, and it's really a great improvement in performance.
One thing you pointed out last night, and I'd never thought about it quite this way, but I could see the reaction from the people as you were talking about it, is if I've got a whole lot of older records and now I'm thinking about moving up to a high-end turntable with a high-end phono cartridge and a really nice phono preamp to get the most out of my vinyl, won't I, when I play the older records, really have a bad experience? And you pointed out, actually, it's the opposite.
Yeah. Well, it starts with the turntable. If all the fundamental elements of the turntable are optimized, their job is to hold the cartridge properly in place, not be mechanically or acoustically influenced by the environment. Let the cartridge hold the cantilever and diamond in the record groove, tracing the music and not be interfered with by surface stuff, dirt and debris on the record. Yes, if it's scratched badly, you'll hear a click each time it passes the scratch. But the other thing is, stylus profiles today have improved to the point where you're playing a different portion of the record groove than the old stylus that was used to play the record years ago. So even though it may seem like a worn out record, playing it on a new system can really bring new life.
Yeah, that older turntable that now has, of course, a phono cartridge that's been used quite a bit, you've really kind of got an almost rounded kind of a thing like the end of your finger, versus getting a really sophisticated modern cut of the diamond where that diamond cut is fitting the record groove beautifully. And so in your older vinyl, you will hear things that just can be really thrilling to hear, because it brings you information that's on the record grooves, but you never heard it because that sort of rounded older,
right, the blunt.
Yeah, the blunt one just couldn't find that information, wasn't sitting properly in the groove to be able to give you that information. I think the next question I'd want to ask you, Robert, is, like with every brand that we carry, there are products that sell better simply because they really represent great value at this price point or that price point. Maybe you could highlight a few of the Pro-Ject models that you find are really doing well in the marketplace, and some models that our customers, would consider if they decide they want to upgrade their vinyl and cartridge and turntable and phono preamp experience.
Sure. Well, we have a model called the PhonoBox DC, and it's, in my estimation, quite inexpensive. It's about $150. Sounds great, has moving magnet and moving coil capability, more basic functionality, but great. That would be a step up over most moderate receivers or integrated amps, preamps. Meant to match a more moderate turntable. Going up the line, we have another model called the PhonoBox S2 that's $250. It offers a more refined sound, better flexibility for matching phono cartridges. Then we go up to a model that's about $500, and it's our first balanced phono preamp, and it's called the PhonoBox S3B. And that offers a wonderful flexibility, much like this one. This is a new model called the Two-Box DS3B. This is $1,100. Has tubes in the gain stage. It's also solid state, so technically it's a hybrid. It's not all tube. But sounds great. Has both single-ended and balanced inputs, and both single-ended and balanced outputs, which are both always active. So you could have this connected to two systems. More importantly, people ask, well, if I'm going to connect my turntable to the phono preamp balanced, but my system is not balanced, will I benefit? And yes, you still will, because the important thing is connecting the phono cartridge to the phono preamp balanced is where the big difference occurs, because again, that's such a vulnerable signal. This preamp and all of our balanced phono preamps will convert the balanced signal from the phono cartridge to single-ended RCA for the output. So it can still be fed into any legacy preamp or receiver or integrated amp. But the adjustability here is really a wonderful thing. On our PhonoBox S3B, again, that's balance capable, $500. And on up, we have switching capability right on the front panel, matching the correct characteristic, whether it's a moving magnet or moving coil phono cartridge, and actually being able to do it on the fly. A lot of other manufacturers have dip switches inside, or they have something you have to get into the unit or turn it over, and flip switches on the bottom. This, having the facilities to do it on the front, means it's super easy to do it. And if you're experimenting with a moving coil cartridge and you want to try different impedance or gain, real simple to do. And in this guy, we even have a continuously variable impedance for a moving coil cartridge, and you can adjust it and play with it and hear the difference and find the sweet spot where it delivers the best sound.
And when you say having the ability to change on the fly, it is fantastic because a lot of folks who may not know a whole lot about impedance and all these kinds of technical things we're talking about, they have records and they know good sound, and if you're listening to one of your favorite albums and simply moving the switches while you're listening, oh, that sounds a little better. Oh, even a little better. Oh, wait, not so good. Okay, that's the sweet spot.
Right.
That's all that you need to know technically is, hey, it sounds great when I set the settings here. Then that's got to be the right spot for you. And you're right that playing with dip switches, which can be so inconvenient and kind of painful.
Right.
So that is a tremendous benefit. And you touched on something else that I think folks often do find confusing, and that's the impedance conversation, which is a little bit different for moving magnet, more entry-level typically cartridges, versus moving coil. So maybe you could talk impedance for a moment.
Sure. Moving magnet cartridges are almost always set up to have a 47 k ohm, 47,000 ohm load, and that's kind of one of the default settings that we have on here. I will say though that there are some really outstanding moving magnet cartridges. In general, moving coil is better, but there are some great moving magnet cartridges, and so it's not necessarily good or bad one way or the other.
Right.
Oftentimes it's what matches the tone arm best, but 47 k ohms is a standard for moving magnet. Moving coil cartridges can range anywhere from 10 ohms to usually not much more than 1,000, but one of the great things about many of our phono preamps is the ability to adjust, and we have a reference guide so that if a customer wants to know, oh, I've got this cartridge and this phono preamp, what are the ideal starting settings? And that way you can get very close, and then if you want to experiment, you can, but with having the settings, instead of going, oh gosh, I don't know what any of these are for, what should I do that? We have some references and a wide range of phono cartridges to match all of our phono preamps.
And that guide is published right online, so it's very easy for the consumer to, oh, okay, I've got this phono cartridge, here's where I want to set the impedance. Yeah. And again, like you say, you can experiment from there, but you probably won't even need to.
Yeah. And we have that document available on the Pro-Ject USA website, and we'll also have it on Sumiko phono cartridges shortly.
Right, very good. Well, Robert, we love being able to involve our customers in this whole vinyl revolution because so many of us here at Gramophone enjoy the best experience we can get, whatever part of the system we want to play with. But are there any other things other than what we've talked about today that somebody who's not familiar with phono preamps might want to know?
Well, I think the important thing is choose a good one, matches your cartridge and turntable system. Oftentimes I'll get calls and folks will say, I've got this and I'm thinking of this. They read a review or they saw something that suggested, yeah, that would be a great thing. That's not necessarily the case. I think that one of the great things that you have here is the opportunity for someone to come in and talk to some of the folks that you guys have on staff and say, here are my system components, what makes sense? Because ideally you want performance level consistent through the entire phono playback system. So that is turntable, arm, cartridge, phono preamp. The phono preamp's really a part of the phono playback system. But you want the system to match performance levels, and if you go a little over or under one way or another, the performance can be limited. Oftentimes it's smart to go up if you know you're going to make other changes or other improvements. So that's where some professional advice and guidance comes in.
Right, and you made the point exactly, because it's a system, that record playing experience, the table itself, turntable, the tone arm, the phono cartridge, the phono preamp you're going into, whether it's the one in your integrated amp or whether it's an outboard one, that really is a system. So a classic example you used last night was, somebody reads a great review of this $1,000 phono cartridge and now they want to put it on their $299 turntable. Well, no, let's back up a step. If you were willing to invest $1,000, let's talk about a better turntable and a phono cartridge that's got the right characteristics for that tone arm. and that's where you're going to get your best experience. So,
Right.
yeah, and it's good just to be able to bounce that off of, you know, the people we have working here at Gramophone. We've got some very, very talented guys who've been doing this for a long time, and we'll be more than happy to give you the guidance. So,
Great.
well, Robert, we have really enjoyed this conversation. We hope that if you've enjoyed this video, you'll like and subscribe, because that helps us out a lot. And click that little bell icon so you're always notified of our upcoming content. We'd love to see you in one of our stores. We're located in Timonium, Columbia, and Gaithersburg, Maryland, down by the Washington, D.C. marketplace. So if you can, come on in. Bring some of your favorite vinyl, if you would, so that we can audition together and find the right product for you, because in the end of the day, it's not really about this one, that one, or the other one. It's about what is the right product for you. I'm Joe with Gramophone. We have enjoyed having you along for the ride. Thanks for watching. If you are interested further, please go to Gramophone's website, gramophone.com, and you can buy most of the Pro-Ject product range at Sky by Gramophone, where you'll always get a secure checkout with fast and free shipping straight to your door. Robert, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.